Hey, thanks for joining us on the TestCrackers YouTube channel. My name's Seth. I'm doing a series on the 10 toughest problem-solving questions in the latest official guide. I'm doing this because I think inside those problems, there's a lot of good tools and tips that can help you out. There are principles that can save you time, and there are strategies that you should have in your back pocket for when you need them. Next up on that list, how many of the integers that satisfy the inequality x plus 2 times x plus 3, quantity, all over x minus 2 are greater than or equal to 0 are less than 5? It's a weird problem in some ways because it's much more of a math problem than a lot of the GMAT stuff you see. It's not a word problem. And where normally I would say your first step is really to take a step back and think what kind of structure is going to work. We've got something like this that's so mathy, I would go ahead and just write it out. All over x minus 2 greater than or equal to 0. And we're saying the number that are less than 5, question mark. So that's part of what's weird about this. Something you'll note in the answer choices is that the answer choices are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Couldn't get more simple than that. And so the real key here is just a way to count. It's what I'd call a finite possibilities problem. There's only so many ways that you could satisfy this condition. We're just counting up how many of those are less than 5. And so that's the first thing we're going to do, is just count them up. Next observation, greater than or equal to, it's really two separate options, right? Greater than 0 or equal to 0. And if you had to pick one of those to deal with first, I would say equal to 0 is easier. Equations are generally going to be easier to work with than inequalities. And so let's start by just thinking, when is this whole fraction going to be equal to 0? Well, a fraction is equal to 0 when the numerator is equal to 0. And in this case, our numerator has two quantities, quantity x plus 2 and quantity x plus 3. So we could actually just say when one of those two things is equal to 0, it would be, which are going to be -2 and -3. So those are the kind of critical points to think about first. We already have two options. We're looking for things less than 5, and so what I think we want to do is to work our way down from there and think 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, and we've already got -2 and -3 checked on here. And then let's see what happens if we go beyond that to -4. But that's kind of the list we're looking at, and now we've dealt with when it is equal to 0. Now the next question becomes, when is it going to be greater than 0? Greater than 0 is a synonym for positive, and the folks at GMAT, whenever they write greater than 0, I immediately just think positive, and whenever they write positive, I immediately think greater than 0. I go on the assumption that whoever's writing problems over there is not my friend, and they are trying to make things as hard as possible for me. So if they can ask something in a kind of backwards way, they're going to do it to me. And that's what they did here. So I'm just saying, when is this thing positive? Well, a fraction is positive when it's either positive over positive or negative over negative, right? What we're wondering is, when do we have both of these be positive? And to go a bit further, right? We've got these two terms on top, and so those are going to be positive when they're both positive, and they're going to be negative when we've got negative and positive. What we're zeroing in on is that this is really a number properties question. It's about positive and negative numbers, and when we're going to get positive and negative numbers in a situation like we have here. And that's what we want to test. We want to think about these scenarios. And we don't need actual values to test these. We don't need to calculate them all out. We just need to say, what is it going to tell us in terms of positive and negative? So if we put 4 in here for x, we would say that's going to be a positive times a positive all over a positive. And if you ask me, that's going to be positive. And so when we ask this question, how many are positive, 4 will work. Let's see what happens with 3. 3 plus 2, 5. 3 plus 3, 6. 3 minus 2, 1. Once again, it works. So we already have 4 that work with hardly any options. I want to point out, A, B, and C are all out, because the way this question is worded, the answers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We know there's not just 1, not just 2, not just 3. It's either 4 or 5 solutions, because we've already found 4 of them with the first couple things we looked at. So now we continue and say, what about 2? Well, quickly you can see 2 creates a problem. We're dividing by 0. This is not positive or negative, it's undefined. You can't divide by 0. If I have 10 books and I want to divide them into 0 groups, I'm asking those books to just disappear. And so we refer to that as undefined. It's not something we're allowed to do on the GMAT or in math more generally. So 2 is out of the picture. What about 1? 1 plus 2 is 3, positive. 1 plus 3, positive. What about 1 minus 2? That's going to be negative. This is going to be a positive over negative. It will not work. 1 is out as well. And so when you think about this, you're thinking, when is that going to change? When are we going to get to a new situation? Is 0 going to do it? 0 is going to be positive, positive, and negative once again, right? And so that's going to have the same problem. Negative 1. Plus 2, positive, plus 3, positive, minus 2, negative. Same situation, so none of these work. It's starting to look like maybe there are only 4, but we've got to think, what happens once we go beyond these critical points where it's equal to 0 of negative 2 and negative 3? What about negative 4? So if we take a look at negative 4, put that in there, that's going to produce a negative result. That's going to produce a negative result. And negative 4 minus 2 will also produce a negative result. So we've got all negatives. The problem is the 2 on top become a positive. And so we end up when positive over negative, and positive over negative is going to equal a negative in terms of the value for the fraction. So that's not going to work either. Some of you might be tempted to continue here. And in the interest of safety, you could. But the problem is we've passed the critical points. We've passed the points at which things start to be equal to 0. And so at this stage, it's hard to imagine that things are going to be any different. If we go all the way on up to negative 50, right, we're going to end up with negative times negative over negative. And that's going to just lead to the same result of a negative value for the fraction. So that's it. These are the only 4 that work. The answer can only be D. As I said, this problem's a bit more mathy than a lot of the ones we're doing here in my hardest series, because it really is not about saying, oh, I have no idea how to take this paragraph and put it in a structure. You're given a structure, and it's more just what you do with that. The thing is, what's interesting, and what I think a lot of people struggle with, is that the approach fundamentally is one of logic more than math. And this is a common theme on the math questions in the GMAT, in data sufficiency in particular. We're not asked to do some sort of transformation that allows us to solve this. We're just asked to look at it and think, when will this produce a positive result? And so that's more about rewriting the question and just reframing this thought. When do I get an appropriate combination of positives and negatives? There's got to be a finite number of those. I just need to find them and count them and know when to limit myself. I'm given this upper limit of less than 5, so I don't need to worry about all those. And I learn this lower limit of negative 3 because I know none of these are going to work beyond that. And that's the approach that's going to be best here. All right, principles here. First principle is rewrite. Remember that things are often given to you in a form that's not ideal. So for example, greater than or equal to 0, we want to think of as positive or 0, right? And that's going to be easier. Next principle. When you're given a problem with finite possibilities, it's just process of elimination. This problem is not about trying to do a math equation or solve a math equation. It's just about realizing there's only a few ways that it could even work. And the final thing about process of elimination is look at the answer choices, right? Because where we're given only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it was very easy to say not 1, not 2, not 3. Okay, is it 4 or 5? Yeah, it's 4. And so that's going to make us zero in on it as well. So those are a couple principles on this one, hopefully helpful there. In general, don't be scared of problems like this just because you're not sure how to do them. You can make an educated guess too. And that's the last point I would make. If you got to where I did, where I had found 4 of them, and you're just not sure whether there will be any more, well, you've narrowed it down to 2. Maybe stop there rather than spending 5 more minutes on it. You never want to spend a super long time on a single GMAT problem. That will destroy your pacing for the whole exam. But it's always worth another 20-30 seconds if it gets you from unsure to sure. And so if you do see how to test that, keep going until you've got a confident answer. Once again, this is a series I'm doing on the 10 toughest GMAT problems. And my goal is to give you the tools that you can use to solve these and other problems, and the principles to help guide the use of those tools and the structures that will make this go most smoothly for you. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of other videos, and like and subscribe if you want to see more like this one. And of course, check out TestCrackers, where we've got full live online, highly interactive courses with me, with some of our other instructors here, in which we'll go through everything you need to score your best on the GMAT. That's for the quant and verbal section, that's pacing strategy, that's study help, that's homework help, all included in a very detailed live interactive course. So check those out over at TestCrackers. And thanks for watching.